Hello and welcome to Life's Like That, the podcast where we talk to people on their journey and call out the second chance hero in all of us. I'm Talie Starr. Thank you so much for joining us, and we really hope you enjoyed this episode.
Hi, Monique. Good to have you with us.
Hi, Talie. Thank you so much for having me.
So you're the CEO of Lucy's Project, but we just want to get to know you just a little bit. If I say the word hero to you, what does that mean?
Oh, hero. When I hear the word hero, the first person who comes to mind is my grandmother. My grandmother passed away when I was quite young, but before she passed away, I still had quite a number of years with her as a child, and is one of the most compassionate people I know, and she would do whatever she could to help someone she had just met at a park or on the street. And I often think of her when I'm thinking, what is the right thing to do in this situation?
Oh, that's so beautiful. She sounds like a very special person to have had in your life. And I imagine a great loss when she was no longer with you.
Yeah.
So if you look back to your younger self, what sort of qualities do you think that you had when you were young?
Oh, oh, I don't think I've been asked this before. I love this question. I think as a child, since I was a child, I have always had quite a strong sense of justice. And always felt that, the world can be really unfair, including for women and girls, and also for animals. And ever since I've been young, I've kind of looked for different ways that we can create change. I remember, for instance, being called to the principal's office when I was in high school, and that was because I was sending out apparently too many petitions to whole school
Oh,
students
I
and stuff.
love it.
Um, so sometimes it has created some friction, but I think that's what we need to do, right? That's what we need to do in order to create change. It's about challenging the status quo and making sure that we create the world together that we want to see.
I just love that image of young Monique out there with her petitions going, come on, we can change the world. Like that is just an awesome picture. So, and thinking you then have these petitions, you want to change the world, you have this heart that just wants to see justice for people. How do you, what plays out for you then? Like, how do you end up where you are now?
Well, I knew that I really wanted to contribute to making the world safer for women and girls. I think from a young age, I became aware of a lot of the violence experienced by women and girls around Australia, in our local communities, but also in the global community. And so that's why I decided to study political science and law because I really wanted to advocate alongside people experiencing all forms of injustice and violence. And that's what eventually brought me to the domestic and family violence sector because, of course, as we all know, domestic and family violence and sexual violence being some of the most prevalent forms of violence perpetrated against women and girls. And that's when I started working in the Australian government on policy around free legal and social support for people experiencing domestic and family violence. And then I started working at Domestic Violence New South Wales, the peak for domestic violence services across the state, which is where I met you.
What a cool thing.
Yes, and it's been such a joy to work alongside you ever since, Talie.
I have to repeat that for you as well. You are such a wonderful person to work with. We're only hearing a real short, brief snippet of your journey. The thing I want to ask you now is so we've journeyed into DV, but now you're working with Lucy's project, which is a completely, well, it's not a completely different thing, but it's got another angle that we don't talk about very much. Do you want to let us know about that?
Yes, so Lucy's project is very much focused on creating systems change to improve the safety of people and animals experiencing domestic and family violence. And when I first learnt about domestic and family violence perpetrated against animals, I had a moment where I was just thinking, how have I not been aware of this earlier? You
Yeah.
know, having at that stage, I had already worked in the domestic and family violence sector for a number of years.
Mm.
And I'd worked with many organizations to understand what the issues and barriers were for people experiencing domestic and family violence. And for some reason, it hadn't been talked about, it hadn't come up. And when I first learned about the issue, I thought, right, well, I need to learn more about this. And that's why when I was at DV New South Wales, we undertook a survey of practitioners across the state. And that piece of work is I guess, something I've worked on that really I found incredibly crushing in some ways, you know, learning about the the different forms of violence used against animals and women and children. It was really distressing and upsetting because we asked practitioners to share what had been disclosed to them. On the other hand, I think by enabling those stories to be heard and ensuring that, you know, practitioners know actually there's that, yes, we're hearing what you're saying, and letting victim survivors know, yes, we're hearing what you're saying, and we definitely need to change the systems. And that was really beautiful to be able to be part of the journey of advocating to the New South Wales government for systems change, so legislative reform, policy reform, so that we can ensure there are better protections for people and animals experiencing violence, and also more animal inclusive services like animal inclusive accommodation.
Yeah, that is so brilliant. I think your, hey, how does this fit in? Why haven't I thought about it? Is probably some of our viewers on here right now would be thinking, oh my gosh, I never even thought about this. So, do you want to
Mm-hmm.
just like very sort of briefly explain how animals are in domestic and family violence?
Yeah, so often people who use violence will use violence against animals and people, including women and children, as a way to exert power and control. And we know that perpetrators and people who use violence will often harm animals or threaten to harm animals as part of a pattern of coercive control. And that can be incredibly psychologically distressing for the women and children who love their animals and for the animals themselves. And that's something we really wish to highlight at Lucy's project, that, you know, when we're talking about who is being subjected to domestic and family violence, the safety of people and animals is so deeply interconnected that if we want to ensure that people, including women and children, can find safety and heal and recover, then we need to ensure the animals they love are also safe and supported to heal and recover. And the most recent research undertaken in Australia has found that 73% of Australian households live with companion animals. And that just shows us, you know, how integral animals are to the lives of many families, many women and children across the country.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think around the world, 73 is probably a similar figure in quite a lot of countries. I think pets in any country kind of bring something. I know some children that have adopted pets on the street, and they may not be in their home, but they'll be in their street with them. And so when we think about animals and we think about people,
Mm-hmm.
they're, like you're saying, they're so intertwined and so important. And the work that you do at Lucy's Project is really important because it's about really raising that awareness, ensuring that animals and people can stay together, especially in situations like domestic and family violence. And,
Mm-hmm.
but I have come to know that Lucy's Project, that they're in a bit of a tricky situation. So I don't normally do an ad and I'm not normally promoting something, but I really want to ask people to think about if you could contribute to the work of Lucy's Project.
Thank you so much, Talie. You've always been such a big supporter of us. Fortunately, Lucy Project previously received funding, but unfortunately, that funding has come to an end. So we did receive funding from the New South Wales government for 2 years, for which we were incredibly grateful, and we we're so pleased to see the impact that we were able to create with that 2 years of funding. Right now, we are running on a very small pool of donations that we still have remaining from community members and from a philanthropic foundation. But those funds are due to run out very soon in the coming months. If we're not able to secure more funds, it really does make the future of the organisation uncertain. But we know that there is still so much work to be done.
Yep.
That's why we're really determined to find ways to keep going. Really, value the support of government and community members, and we've been so thankful for the relationships that we do have with some of our corporate partners. Most recently, as you would know, because you were a very important contributor to our national roundtable on domestic and family violence perpetrated against people and animals, we held the roundtable across 3 sessions, and there were so many recommendations about the changes we still need to create across Australia in terms of policy reform, legislative reform, program reform to better support people and animals experiencing violence and to enable them to heal and recover. And so Lucy's project really wants to continue to drive that work forward and ensure that we are creating those systems changes needed. So any support that people are able to provide makes a huge difference for us as a small charity. So donations are tax deductible. And also if people would like to contribute in other ways, like if they're able to volunteer to help write grant applications or to fundraise with us, or to contribute to any of our policy advocacy research work, we really welcome that as well.
Yeah, great. So I want to ask our listeners out there to think about, is there some way that you could support Lucy's project? As we're in the 16 Days of Activism, let's think about pets. Let's think about how important they are. Let's think about what we can do to make a difference to women and children and others that are fleeing domestic and family violence. And if you can support Lucy's project in any way, that'd be great. How do they find you?
Oh, well, if people go to lucyproject.com, so www.lucy'sproject.com, you can find a link to contact us or to donate.
Awesome. As I finish with everyone, I want to ask you, what qualities do you think you've gained when you think about the young child who had that real heart for people and wanted to change the world and do petitions? What qualities do you think you've gained from being that young child to now?
I think I have retained a lot of my qualities, but one thing I have reflected on was when I was younger, I often was deeply affected when I learnt about all the different injustices and violence that people and animals are subjected to. And it would cause me a lot of what I think in the research they often call empathic distress. And I think one of the things that I've learnt more recently that I think is incredibly helpful is that if we take action when we are feeling empathy towards a person or towards an animal, then that is actually a really wonderful antidote to that empathic distress. When people take compassionate action, that is actually one way to not only act to create change, but that can actually, mean that we can kind of move through the empathic distress. And so I think that's probably one of the key learnings that I've had from experience and also from learning what they say about that in the literature.
Oh, that's so awesome. What a great note to end on. I think such a wonderful call to action for us this 16 Days of Activism. Empathetic compassion. Let's all sit with it. Let's take it with us. Let's take some action. Let's maybe even help Lucy's project or some other thing around the world that might be really important and change the lives of people. Thank you so much, Monique, for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Talie.